Okay, so it looks like we're currently recording. And I'll just quickly overview again, just for the benefit of the recording. So there's options across the top toolbar from File, where you open images, view recently opened images.
I think you're slightly far from your microphone. Is it possible?
Okay, how's this?
Perfect.
Okay. So the tools option, where you've got options for making figures, registering serial sections, or fusing images from independent fluorescent channels, or indeed from QPTIFFs, which are a Perkinelmer or Koya bioscience image type. Then we've got the view series of options, where you can look at slide labels, thumbnails, and turn them on or off. And you can also change the interface from the light to the dark skin. So here we've got orange and grey color scheme, and this would be probably more suitable for viewing of fluorescent images, where the contrast between a dark background and a dark GUI would be easier on the eye than if you were using the lighter skin. Most people would use this skin for the bright field images. Okay, and last but definitely not least, you've got the Help tab. So back when I started in Indica, there was nothing here at all. The application scientists would have to email PDFs to everybody in order to give them a very rudimentary guide in how you would use the software. So that's all changed, and it's always been upgraded and improved. So you have, from top to bottom, this About tab that tells you what modules you've got installed, some basic information about your Halo database, so how many studies and images are there. And then you have the Halo User Guide. Now, the Halo User Guide is a very in-depth document that explains what a lot of the features are doing. I probably wouldn't go to the Halo User Guide straight away. If you're a new user, I would probably focus on the step-by-step guides. So if you click on algorithms here, any algorithm that you have installed will have accompanying it a step-by-step guide. So if we were to take the ish guide, for example, and I'll just share this so you should be able to see. Can everyone see the PDF?
You can see the PDF.
So this is it's a Halo 3.0 user guide, and if you scroll down, it says this guide will show you how to use the ish module. So it's designed in such a fashion that somebody with no prior experience of image analysis could follow the steps using these numbered circles and the corresponding description in the box, how to process the workflow and get a result. It wouldn't be the best possible results that you could obtain without more experience and time on the system, but it would enable you to go from nothing to something. So I definitely recommend to have a look at the step-by-step guides if you're starting out with Halo. If you scroll down, you'll see some markup images, and if you look at these analysis tip little boxes, they give you more of a desirable outcome tip. So if you want something to work a little bit better, pay attention to the light bulb analysis tips. Okay, I'll just close this down and we'll go back to Halo. So the last thing I should mention on the Help tab is that you have this quick reference guide now. And this actually opens within Halo, and it will give you a list of keyboard shortcuts. So the idea, it seems like there's a lot, but the idea is that when you're an experienced user, you'll just be able to flip back and forth various modes. You'll be creating annotations, turning the markup on and off, selecting annotation tools. All of this can be done using these shortcuts here. So mainly for annotations, you're using Alt plus another key on the keyboard, and then for editing the annotations, you're using Control, and Control does other things as well, markup images. But what I would suggest is just, if there's an operation you're doing frequently, chances are that there's a hotkey combination for that, which will make your life a little bit easier. Here's an icon legend just telling you what various tools do. So you can see that you've got a list of icons. And these are updated icons. They've been updated to 3.1. So there's a couple of new ones as well. Okay, so very important to mention before we get digging into the workflow that this is your go-to guide. As a follow-up, there's also a learning portal, which is on the Indica Labs website with access to webinars, videos, application notes, that kind of thing. And then, last but not least, the applications team is ready to assist any of you with training or troubleshooting. And we have a file transfer protocol in place, so you can upload images to our SharePoint, which we can then review, optimize the analysis, and discuss either the results that we've got and how you should use the software in its best modality to get the best result. Okay, so I'm going to start now with the software itself. So you've got a series of tabs across the top toolbar, or second from top toolbar, that allows one to proceed through a workflow. First, opening it and organizing images within the study. And then you have an option for management of TNAs. I'm not going to cover that today because it comes off at a little bit of a tangent, but I'll keep it in reserve for a second training session. Then you've got the annotations tab. This is where you create, view, and manage annotations or selections of ROIs across your digital slide. The next is the classifiers tab. So classifiers allows you to segment tissue using machine learning and making training marks on your image that the software then learns from and makes, as it describes here, makes a tissue mask. The classifiers has come a long way in the last 3 or 4 years. So in 2017 we launched an AI-based classifier, and originally it was just this Halo AI VGG network. And since then it's really exploded into a lot of different applications and tasks that can be performed using neural networks. If you don't have Halo AI installed, you'll only see this random forest on the classifier. But it's worth mentioning that these other tasks that we're now using AI to perform, like segmenting nuclei from difficult to segment sections, phenotyping nuclei, QCing slides, and also these tissue segmentation algorithms here, MiniNet and DenseNet. Once you've classified the tissue in this workflow, you may go through to the Analysis tab. The Analysis tab is where you load a pre-configured module in Halo. So you'd select Setting Actions, and then you would select Load. And what you'll be able to bring up is a list of analysis modules that you've currently got installed. So you might have a Halo plus 5 module, which contains cytonuclear, Hyplex FL, immune cell, IHC. So you'll see those modules there. And you'll be able to select one of them. So let's, for example, select immune cell. And then this analysis tab will populate with a series of parameter subheadings. So you've got an area for picking stains, an area for optimizing the detection of immune cells, and so on. So this is the Analysis tab. You can also analyze from the Analysis tab. This is a local analysis. So this is where we are optimizing and making small field of view analysis or analysis of single images. If you want a batch process, then you need to work from the Studies tab, and you're selecting multiple images here and selecting Analyze. At this stage, we're just going to use this to optimize our tuning of the algorithm. Finally, you have the Results tab. And what you'll get here when you've proceeded through this workflow, studies, annotations, classifiers, analysis, results, you'll see a list of jobs or results associated with that particular image. have maybe multiple results here. Maybe it'll be different algorithms. Maybe one will be a hormone receptor quantification. Maybe the other will be vessel characterization. You can see multiple results here. With the result actions, you can also export. You can filter object level data. Now, object level data is typically every cell on the image. So those of you that are familiar with Halo, you may have seen some of the marketing material that describes interactive link between the data and the image. So if you click on one of the cells in the data table, you'll see where that cell lives on the image and vice versa. It used to be the case that that was pretty much everything you could do in the results tab, but we've also developed some spatial analysis tools and some advanced plotting functions, and they're accessible from here as well. So if you want to just export the data when you're done, you can do that, and that's exported as a CSV file. Or you can do some mining of the data, you can filter, and you can graphically display the cell populations in different ways. I'll come to that towards the end, but just to make you aware that this plot function is hidden away down here, and it's pretty useful. Okay, so I've completed the overview. Is there anything that anyone would like to ask, or any comments so far? Any specific questions about your application? Sounds like it's a no, so I'm going to proceed on and just show you guys how to select images and open them in Halo. So we'll start our journey in the Studies tab. And if you select File, Open Images, you'll open up an example from, here we've got a TMA example. You'll open up a dialog box here that allows you to select images. And you can see here there's a multitude of file types. CZI for Zeiss, SDS, which is Scanscope, Virtual Slide for Leica. You can open these images up in Halo. And then when you've opened them, you'll see they appear here in the studies list. They appear in whichever study you've currently got open, but Halo will prompt you just to check that you're opening the image in the correct folder. When you make collections of or depositories of images in a study folder, try and put them all in the same folder that you wish to batch process. So this is because it's a little bit easier to just open a single folder, select all of the images by pressing Ctrl A, and then analyze, and that's your batch process. You can batch process it from separate folders by adding things to the queue, but it's a little bit easier if you just open all of your images that you want to batch process into a single study folder. Okay, so what we can see here is a list of studies that make up this Halo database. So I've got a few different examples of applications for our different modules. So Hyplex FL is a fluorescent module, TMA or tissue microarray, some examples for Halo AI, which we'll hopefully show later today, and then lastly some examples for cell-based nuclear or cytoplasmic assessment. Images can be moved around to different study folders. So if you right-click on an image, you'll see there's also options to copy to different studies, move to a different study. And if I want to do the same editing, I can select Image Actions drop-down. So often in Halo, you'll see two or multiple ways of obtaining the same result. In this tab, we can access the same set of options by clicking the drop-down or right-clicking. And it just becomes a habit, really, of whichever way you start to do it more often. So I tend to right-click just to get the options to analyze or export results or what have you. Okay, so the options under the Study Actions area are creating a new subfolder within the folder you've selected, renaming the selected folder, or you can move or indeed delete that study folder entirely. You can also sort So depending on the setup that you have, you might have a large number of users sharing the same Halo database. The naming nomenclature is really up to you, whether you assign the folders on groups or projects or time and date. Can you possibly turn off your speakers? Just going to hear some background noise. Thank you. It seems to have resolved it. So you can edit these study folders here. But if you have a large number of users, then I would take use of the searching function. So if, for example, your name is Anne and you name your study folder Anne, if you put a search in here, you'll bring up all study folders with that key term in the title. So this could be a good way to search. We can also sort as well. I didn't show these drop downs. New to old, old to new, A to Z, or Z to A. And if we come down to image actions, I won't quite go into the same detail here yet, but just to know there's also a search on a per image basis. The searching here will actually bring up images from all study folders if you were to select studies. And it actually gives you a clue here because it says search everywhere. Whereas if I'm just inside the nuclear, it's going to say search in this folder. So if you want to search across the whole database, then you can do that as well by selecting studies. Okay, so let's move forward and we're going to open an image within the Halo viewer. So if I was to select this image and double click on the icon, the thumbnail area, you'll see what happens is the image opens within the main viewer. So this is the Halo main view screen, and we can move around the image by pushing the mouse wheel away from us, which then zooms in, and we can pan by dragging the left mouse button and zoom out again by pulling the mouse wheel towards us. One of the new features of Halo 3.1 is there's actually a zoom slide button here, which can just move back and forward to default levels of magnification. The reason we've got these is because the SVS file format contains within it metadata, and it's a pyramidal file format that actually allows us to view at different magnifications. So here you can see another option here, which is setting the magnification. Most of the time I just zoom in and out using the mouse wheel, but then that is a little bit of a habit. This is a brand new feature, so it remains to be seen whether people will start to use the slide bar or whether they'll just find it quicker to just move in and out using the mouse. When you're at higher magnification, do remember that there's a thumbnail up here which you can use just to jump around the image. So this is one of the advantages of digital pathology or digital image analysis. You don't have to wheel the microscope out, move the slide in order to see a different region of the image. You can do it all just using the thumbnail up at the top. The thumbnail can be made larger or smaller, and the option to disable the thumbnail is under View. And if you remember here in the introduction, I just mentioned that is the option to turn off the thumbnail and slide label here. You can also turn off the scale bar. So the scale bar is down here. That's a new addition as well to Halo 3.0. So you can turn on and off the scale bar. I would probably hazard a guess that most people would prefer that to remain on. Okay, so some other options when viewing the image. You can change the zoom to fit the whole image, which is a new option in 3.1. And you can also change to full screen mode. So full screen mode allows you to do a couple of things. It allows you to view the image without any of the Halo GUI or interface sort of clouding your judgments or getting in the way of ascertaining what's going on in the image, how much staining is present, what features of the tissue am I looking for. That's number one. Number two is probably the use of dual monitors. If you want to drag the images to a different monitor, you can have the Halo interface in one monitor, and then if you're dual screening, you can have the image open in a separate monitor, so you get the most use of the available screen space. And number three is that you'll notice the annotation tools go with you when you move the image. So if you want to focus on selecting regions of interest, you can use these tools down here to do so without the rest of the Halo interface in the way. So that's a couple of things there that we'll come to in more detail later, specifically annotations. But just be aware that if you want to move images into full screen, then it may make things easier. So let's just reset that. Okay, so you'll have noticed that I'm currently working with one image. If I was to open a second image, what will happen is that the images will then default to a tabbed arrangement. So this is a very Windows 10 approach to having images open. You have tabs at the start, at the top toolbar. It used to be the case in Halo that you had a tiled array, so by default multiple images were open in tiles, and we just found this way a lot cleaner and a lot easier to flick back and forth. When you've got multiple images open, you'll notice that right-clicking on the tab gives you some options. So you can close documents, you can float, and this is another action that allows you to make use of the full screen. So if I float this image, you'll see it detaches, and you can drag that across. And then some other options are the tiling. So as I mentioned, tiling used to be the default modality, but now if we select any of these tile options, you'll see that the images are now positioned alongside each other. So if you've got two images that may be of relative interest, such as a control and a treatment group, you can view them side by side. But also if you've got serial sections, you can view those side by side. And when you're registering serial sections, which is up here in the Tools Image Registration, this requires the registration module or serial section analysis module. But it allows you to view images side by side and synchronize the mouse movements. So if you've got these sections, and they might be four different sections sequentially from the same block, or as they're becoming more popular, it might be a single section that's been stained, stripped, and restained, and then that section has been imaged, and then Halo will align the same piece of tissue but with different staining profiles. Whatever the case, that's going into a little bit of additional detail, but whatever the case, viewing options side by side may be of use for you in your day-to-day workflow. Okay, so let's move on from viewing images, and we're going to talk a little bit about making annotations in Halo. So before I go on, is there any questions about what we've just talked about? So image studies, images are being sorted and searched for, and also the viewing options. So any questions on that? If you want, you can message me the questions afterwards. So I know that in very large group situations, people are somewhat hesitant to speak up. So please do email me, or you can message me the questions later. We'll be happy to answer anything. Okay, so let's move on to the annotations tab. So I'm just going to select this tab from the top toolbar, and you'll see that we've got Alistair, just a question. Okay, I'll continue. So what we've got here is the annotations tab, and I have at the bottom here some options for selecting regions of the tissue you want to use for analysis. So the way I describe it is that annotations is a manual, possibly semi-automated way of selecting the tissue. The classifier is using machine learning, so it's quicker. But annotations are useful because they're directly drawn or created by the user, which is sometimes a pathologist, so you're getting a very, very precise selection of tissue. The downside to making annotations is if you want to make a lot of them, it's going to take a long time, whereas a classifier might work a bit quicker. But we'll show both, and hopefully it will become apparent which one to go for when you want to select regions of the tissue. Okay, so here I have a xenograft. The staining, I believe from memory, is Chi67, which is a nuclear stain. We've got some necrotic regions in the tissue. If I choose one of the most basic annotation tools, which is the pen tool, and you'll see the cursor changes to a pen, I can start by selecting this region that I may want to exclude from the analysis. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm just making a rough outline of something that I don't want. And this might be debris, it might be tissue folds, it might be areas of problematic staining. You just want to exclude something that's not going to be included. So what I've done here is I've created an annotation, and if I select this annotation, I have some options here that I can use to edit the annotation. And one of them is to invert, and you'll see there's also a hotkey for this. So by inverting, I've made a region I wish to exclude from analysis. I could do the same thing using the scissor tool or exclusion drawing tool. And here you can see we're creating a region to exclude from the analysis. What we really want to do is choose regions to include, and so we could use other tools like the brush annotator, which is a tool for almost colouring in large areas of tissue. And the size of this tool can be adjusted using the slide bar, and you'll see how it goes from very small to quite a large tool, and that's a way to select regions that you wish to include. So you may want to do that. There's a couple of other tools, one of which is the magnetic line drawing tool, and it's termed as such because it allows you to be a little bit more carefree with your accuracy of the line, and Halo will attempt to draw onto a region for you based on an area of contrast. So it's almost like an assisted line. When you finish drawing with the tool, make sure that you press Enter on the keyboard to detach the cursor from the line. Otherwise, you'll be forever having a line chasing you around the image. So make sure you press the key just to stop the line drawing. So it's tracking, like so, tracking, tracking, tracking. And then if I press Enter, it'll save the last yellow piece of the line in this instance. Obviously, the other annotations could be different colours, but you'll see the bit that's in process. By clicking, you save it and move along. So that's a magnetic pen tool. Okay, so the image is now becoming a little bit busy. We've got a series of annotations that have been created. Some of them are inclusive. So here you have these regions that we wish to analyse, and this one is going to be an area of exclusion. The information about annotations is shown here under the Annotations tab, and information like length, area, type, and whether it's positive or negative, so an area to be excluded, included. It's worth noting that these annotations do stack, so if you were to create a positive annotation around this area, then you'd end up with the periphery being analysed and then this bit being excluded. So this is how this stacking or layering of annotations works. Okay, you can also sort and filter. So if you want to look at only the small annotations in terms of length or area, you can. And you see here that you've got polygon, and that's because there's also some options to make shapes. So you've got circles or ellipses and squares. I think if you press Control or Shift, so Control will make it an area of exclusion, and if you press, it must be Shift, you'll make a perfect circle. See this time how the circle remains perfect and it doesn't become an ellipse. Same with the square. Okay, so we've now got a little bit of a mess. So let's come back up here to layer actions, and we can choose to delete layer, delete all layers. If you made a mistake with annotating, by all means press Control Z on the keyboard, and you'll see how it just undoes the last action. Control Y will actually redo it. So you can see there, just by pressing Control Z, I'm going to remove some of my annotations. I can also make changes in bulk. It's possible to press Control A and select all of your annotations. You see how they've all been highlighted. In the Annotations tab, you've also got the highlighting of these different polygons. Okay, so let's make some changes in batch. So maybe I want to delete all layers. And then we're now back to where we started with a blank canvas. Okay, there's another tool which is very often used. That's called the flood fill annotation tool. So if I select this, you'll see that again, it's got the targeting reticule. And what I'm going to do is just sample the pixels within the reticule. And what Halo did then was it very quickly scanned the rest of the pixels for similarity to these pixels. Where it found a boundary or a contrast between pixels, it stopped making the annotation. So this tool is used for very quick selections of tissue. It also can be used at higher magnification. So if I wanted to zoom right in and maybe make the tool a little bit smaller, you'll see how it just grabs this necrotic region. So it's not just for whole tissue. You can actually pick out tissue subtypes using it. And more specific than that, you can actually make the tool pick out very small features. So there's just a stained nuclei that it's selecting. You might have noticed I didn't need to go to the tool here to increase and decrease the size because I was using some hotkeys. And those are the open and close square brackets. So if I open the hotkeys out, I get the option to increase and decrease the size of the target. You'll probably become very familiar with this tool. It's often used. Okay, that's the majority of the tools. I'll let you experiment with the rest, dropping pins into the tissue, making rulers. These are things that you can experiment with. And I'll quickly, before I move on from annotations, I'll talk about a couple of things. One of those is annotation layers, and the second thing is advanced options for annotations. So firstly, you'll see here you've got this layer 1 naming convention. You'll be able to make multiple layers of annotations, and those can be processed in batch. So if you had a tissue with multiple structures, maybe a section of brain, you could then create layers for different regions. Those can be analyzed separately, sequentially, so in batch, but all the same separately, and you can look at how many positive cells there were for different layers. Layers themselves can be made visible, invisible. They can be renamed. So layer 1 is not all that informative. You may wish to rename to a more useful or indicative terminology here, so you're not just stuck in your results with layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, and then you have to go back and forth and work out what that layer was. It's better to name it here and then when you export your results, you'll have this, the very precise tissue name in your Excel. So just think about naming. You can recolor these if you want to. They have a specific preference for color. And then finally, I'll just quickly show if you want to create a new layer, you can select Layer Actions, New Layer, and then we can make some field of view options here. Now I've got Layer 2 and Layer 1. Both of them have got different shapes within them. Well, let's come quickly to Advanced. So I'm going to select this option here, and you'll see that I can do a few things on the way down. I can rotate, grow, shrink, invert, which we talked about earlier, copy, paste to a different slide. But under Advanced, I won't go into them in great detail, especially for new users, but if you want to measure the thickness of a layer, you could do so here. If you want to partition a region, maybe you want to look outside a tumour for the occurrence of cells of interest. You can see here we're putting boundaries outside the necrotic region. There's little kind of tricks that you can use Halo annotations to perform. So if you are interested in some kind of advanced level manipulation of the annotations you're creating, then either have a play down here yourself, or just come and ask one of the applications team. Normally in Halo, where there's a will, there's a way. So if you can think of something you want to do, very often through fiddling and combining different parts of the workflow, we can get the result that is a desired outcome. Okay, so I've spent a little bit of time on annotations, so I'll probably move on now to the classifier. So before I go forward, is there any questions on annotation layers, the advanced options, that kind of thing? Okay, so possibly not at this stage. The next tab we'll go on to is the classifiers tab, and you can see here that you've got a classifier actions drop down. This is really where we're starting to create a new classifier, save an existing classifier, or load one that we've already made. These two I wouldn't pay too much attention to for a new user. On the right-hand side of the tab, you have the Classify drop-down, and this is your first introduction in Halo to the real-time tuning window. The real-time tuning window is something which is fairly unique in Halo software, and it allows you to look at how the software is performing tissue segmentation, or indeed cell segmentation, in real time. As you make changes, you'll see this update. So the real-time tuning window is a good friend, really, in Halo analysis, and we'll look at that more so in the Analysis tab. But just to introduce it, this is one of the key elements for tuning and optimizing both classifiers and algorithms. Okie dokie. Let's create a random forest classifier. So our aim in this experiment will be to automatically segment the necrotic region so that we don't have to manually annotate. So I'll leave this set as random forest, and I'm going to click to add a couple of new classes. The first one will be the tissue that we want, so this is what we want to include. And I'm going to press enter to save that class and move on to the next one. And the next one will be process, and the final class will be just a class background. You don't have to add the class, but just for the purpose of this experiment, I will demonstrate it. As I press enter on the last of our classes, you'll see it says class 4. If you click away, what will happen is that it'll just close that down because you haven't saved it. Okay, so I've just clicked on the slide, and I've made a training mark for the tissue class. Obviously, I've made it outside, so if you want to delete that, then just right-click the mark here and delete it. Let's make a tissue in the correct place. So if I click here, you'll see I'm making a few sample marks around the image. When you're creating these, don't make them too big or too numerous when using a random forest classifier, because it will slow down the classification. You'll see some advice under the help classifier, possibly in Halo AI. One of these two, let's go and have a quick look to see if we can find it. Okay, so this is just a little description of how many classes you should make. So if you're using random forest.
Sorry, you have to share this.
Okay. Just say shared at the top of my screen, but I'll stop sharing and I'll share again. Okay, share content. Okay, so you should be able to see at least the Halo description here. So it says classify training regions. This is giving you some examples of how to make training regions. So if you ever think back and can't remember exactly what we described today, please do have a look at the PDFs here, where it'll tell you exactly what to do to get the best result. So 3 to 5 examples per class for random forest. Smallish training regions, the smaller is better. Only color and texture are used for training, easily obtained from small examples. If you're looking at AI, then we have hundreds of examples per class. More examples, the better, and also the larger the examples, the better. So I won't go too much into AI today, but do take a look at these user guides if you want to look at how to make training regions for annotations. Okay, so back to, if we just open up Halo again. Okay, so back to Halo itself. So we're going to make a small number. I've probably made a little bit too many annotations here, but for the purpose of the demo, it'll be fine. So I thought make some training marks and on the necrotic region, and finally I'll make some in the glass. Okay, so training marks have been made across the tissue. If you want to recolor, you can do so. Maybe we'll have the glass grey or white. And now what we'll do is we'll just have a look at some of the options here for resolution and minimum object size. For the random forest classifier, I probably wouldn't adjust the resolution. I'll probably leave it as a default. The purpose of having this resolution setting is so that if you have images that you want to classify in batch, but they have different objectives, you're going to classify them or even train the classifier on the same pixel density. So that's microns per pixel. For random forest, I would leave this the same. If you're doing an AI-based classifier, then maybe we would adjust this, but I wouldn't do it for this type. Minimum object size, this will allow you to filter out very small objects from each class, which you may or may not wish to do. The default setting is set at 200 microns squared. And now I'll go ahead and I'll open the real-time tuning window. So we select classify and real-time tuning. And you can see there's an overlay now within a small window in the software. So I will open this window a little bit larger so you can see what we're doing. So Halo is trying to automatically segment the necrotic region from the tissue. So we've got blue, we've got the black, which is highlighted out here, and then we've got the glass, which should be shown with a white overlay. If I was to close this window here and change the color, maybe this will be a little bit more obvious. We've got the red overlay there. So you can see here we've got some small areas which may or may not be misclassified. So to investigate those, we can click the layered option here to turn the analysis marker on or off. You'll notice when it's on, there's the option to move a transparency slider. So you can go from all the way opaque to totally transparent. Most people would like to be somewhere in the middle here, so you can see the biological section underneath the overlay. This classifier is not yet optimized because you've got these small regions here. What I would suggest doing is just painting over the areas that are misclassified, like so. And what will happen is the classifier will update. See there how it flickers in the real-time tuning window, and we've got a new overlay shown. If I move around, you'll see maybe this is not quite perfect here, so I'll just adjust the size of the brush, just make a couple more painting marks, and again what will happen is the overlay updates. Okay, so you could do it that way, but you could also use the minimum object size that we discussed. So you see these small fragments here, or maybe these areas of glass. If you wanted to remove those, maybe the areas of tissue here, then increase this minimum object size. And what will happen is these things will start to disappear. So maybe a little bit hard to see over WebEx, but they did just filter out. Okay, when you're making a classifier like this, you can make it across multiple images. So you can move to a second image and carry on the training marks. That's going to enable you to make a more robust classifier. Okie dokie. When we finish classifying, what you can do is save the classifier. So if we select classifier actions and save, we're going to term this classifier necrosis classifier, and I'll put the save date in. This classifier is then saved so we can use it with the Halo analysis later on. There's a few other things with the classifier. You can classify the image. Let's run the classifier. So if you just want a result output at this stage, and you don't want to look at cell-by-cell data, then you can just quickly classify the tissue. So here you can see we've classified a section. There's no cell-by-cell data here, we're just looking at what's necrotic and what's viable tissue. And you'll see a result associated with this classified area, tissue area, necrotic area. Okay. Another option as well, if you're feeling inquisitive and keen to experiment, you'll know that there's some advanced options up here. These give you the option to create an annotation layer. So remember we made annotations before manually, but it's also possible to make an annotation layer through a classifier. And also you can change the marker to a probability or a heat map. So this is giving us the probability that this region is viable tissue. That's a different overlay or a different way to view segmentation. When you're viewing in this format, only one of the classes is displayed qualitatively. So you're just saying that this area is very likely to be viable tissue based on the training marks that you've inputted. If you're going to select modules for Halo, it's very very recommended that you select the classifier, because the classifier sits above all of the other modules in the workflow. So if you ever want to focus on a particular region of the tissue, I would probably select the classifier as one of your go-to modules. I mean, the classifier itself can generate results on its own, as we've seen. So it can make outputs as well as facilitate and act synergistically with other modules, make them better, make them more informative. Okay, so I'm going to pause a second. Are there any questions on the classifier and how that should work? Okay, I'm just going to quickly check in with my colleagues. Is the screen okay and the audio still working well? It's good. Okay, thank you. Okay, so next we'll move across to the analysis tab, and I'm going to load up an algorithm. So I'll select setting actions, load, and I'm going to use an algorithm that I suggest that most of you start with if this is predominantly new users, and there's looked to be 20-25 people on the WebEx earlier, so I'm going to hypothesize that some of you will be new to the system. So my advice is to start with cytonuclear, and then when you're more comfortable, move on to multiplex IHC. And these are cell-based bright field modules. If you're a fluorescent user, then my advice would be to start with cytonuclear FL or 5-plex FL. It doesn't really matter which one of those you start with. And they both allow you to select an unlimited number of fluorescent markers. Let's start with cytonuclear, and you'll see that some of the trends or traits within the workflow are ubiquitous across multiple modules. There are key elements that once you've done it once in one module, it'll be apparent in the next. So let's highlight cytonuclear and hit select, and you'll see that this setting actions or analysis settings pane becomes populated with this module, cytonuclear, and the version number is 2.09. Let's start by just opening the real-time tuning window. So if we select Analyze and Real-Time Tuning, you'll see that the window opens and you can see some kind of altered image within the window. This is called a markup image. It just reflects what Halo is seeing. So it's telling you, the user, what the analysis is doing at that time. Your next thing to do is to click on the top of these parameter subheadings, and you can move through them by clicking them, or indeed you can use the mouse wheel to open and close. So you start with analysis magnification, and you work downwards, filling in settings until you get the result that is to your liking. So if we start with analysis magnification, you'll see this is currently set to 1, and this is 1 multiplied by the maximum objective magnification of the image when it was acquired on your slide scanner. So here it's 20 times, but you could be imaging at 40 times native objective, and in that case it would be 1 times 40. If I was to change this and put 1.5 in, you'll see that we've applied a digital zoom, and this has now changed to 30 times. I could go even higher, but you'll end up getting a degradation of the image or a pixelation effect because you're going into a digital zoom and we're not actually imaging optically. So more often than not, we usually use decimals to come out to a lower working magnification. And the advantage of working at a lower magnification is the analysis is faster, but you have to ensure that your results are going to be quality results when working at a lower mag. If you're doing something like RNA-ish, using the RNA scope kits, which is a common application for us, you'll use a different module, but make sure your image zoom is roughly equating to 30 or 40 times working magnification. So try an image in 40 times and then work between 30 and 40. For style-based analysis, because the structures we're trying to identify are larger, you can get away with 20 times or even 10 times would be sufficient. I'll stick at default for this experiment. Let's move on now to stain selection. So you'll see there's only one option here, so when we've selected that, we can move on to stain selection. Halo wants you to choose the stains of interest and also sample the image so that you can teach it what to look for. So nuclear stain is going to be hematoxylin. So let's click on this more options icon here, which is represented by a square with 3 dots in it. And we will click somewhere on the image that contains just hematoxylin. So there you've got 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, possibly nuclei. So some of them are stained with DAB. We want to try and avoid that. So let's use pixel zoom to go in a little bit closer, try and incorporate pixels that are just hematoxylin pixels. You can use the tabs just to move around, make sure you omit any stain of a different class, different category. And you'll probably become familiar with these if you're doing RNAscope because the punctate spots are a lot smaller, so you may have to use the tab just to capture them correctly. Try not to go into a single pixel because then you're getting one value of RGB optical density for something which will be used to find all of your nuclei across the slide or indeed multiple slides. So let's press OK. And you'll see that the markup image changes slightly when you make these alterations. And the next thing to do is select number of stains, and you'll see the option is from 1 through to 4. I in this image will choose just 1 because it's a single stained image. If you are multiplexing in bright field, then the options here are to go to 4 stains of interest. And in multiplex IHC, you can go to 5 stains of interest, and we can deconvolve. Obviously, that will depend on the stain inputs, so it's not any particularly easy task to work up that many stains. If you're in fluorescence, I won't show fluorescence today, but fluorescence is actually a little bit easier because you don't have to pick stains from the image. Halo automatically recognizes the individual channels. Let's select one stain, and if you want to, you can name the stain. So here I'll put Chi67 into this text field here, and under the Chi67 stain, it has a default value for brown, but I'd like to select a stain from the image. So here, if I go down to this nucleus and press OK, you'll see it updates the options here. Chi67 localization is nuclear, so we'll select nuclear. Exclusion stain is used if you've got debris or possibly something like a tissue fold or maybe tar or something in the lung sample, something which you want to remove from the stain, from the analysis. You can use that. I'm not going to go into too much detail because there's a lot of ways to remove sections from a slide in Halo. It's a case of there's many ways to skin a cat. So you could use annotations, you could use classifiers to classify, or you could use exclusion stain. So we won't dive into that just yet. But if you ever have something you need to remove from the section that's getting in the way of your analysis, just be aware there's multiple ways to do it. The next option here is phenotyping. If you had multiple stains, maybe you had a membrane stain, a nucleocytoplasmic stain, you can create phenotypes that correspond to any combination, both including or excluding those stains. So you'll see if I make an exclusion, a number of phenotypes, set to 2, you now have this phenotype here appearing, and it's got criteria for it. So maybe you're interested in a particular type of immune regulating cell. you can set phenotypes under the same selection option here. But we'll keep it simple today and we'll just leave this at 0 for phenotypes. Okay, now we're down to output image. At the moment we're viewing hematoxylin. That's deconvolved, so Halo is already splitting the image into its component stains, or attempting to. But if I change to a 567 stain, you'll see there's the brown. So that's showing you where the dab is located. If I change then to the second set, which is markup images, you'll see cells that are shown to be positive, so that's called cell markup. And you've also got a markup specific for this type of stain. And what we can see here is that all nuclei are shown in the center, and they're either blue, which is negative, or yellow, orange, or red for 1+, 2+, or 3+ positivity. The line outside is the cytoplasm boundary or periphery, so this is where the cytoplasm extends to. If we move on from stain selection to cell detection, we'll see how we optimize the selection of our nuclei. Okay, so the first thing to do when you're looking at your nuclear segmentation is to change the max cytoplasm radius to 0. And so this is just going to enable us now to find or see what we're not getting accurate, see what we're doing wrong. You can see a few objects have been missed here. There may be some false positives. So using the transparency slider again, you can see that there's a strip of cells here, which I'll just quickly move the brush tool along just to show you. So draw your attention maybe across here. These objects here are false positives by and large because there's a few in the center there that are being picked up on the basis of a background of hematoxylin. So what we can do is adjust some settings to remove those. The most basic is the minimum optical density. So if you increase this, you'll see that objects that shouldn't be included begin to drop out. So eventually, you see how objects are disappearing from the markup window? And what you can do is keep increasing that until you start to see nuclei underneath. And then you know that you've gone too high. So that's a nice option to start with. You can also segment on the basis of contrast. So let's turn the real-time tuning window off. And we'll just look at an example of a high contrast object relative to a low contrast object. So here you've got a cell which is very intensely stained. It also has a sharp border between the background and the nucleus itself. Corresponding, you've got some other objects which are very diffuse. Maybe the nuclei is damaged, or the nuclear membrane is ruptured, or it's within a high background area. There isn't a great deal of contrast between the nuclear object and the background. So what we would do here is really use a contrast threshold in order to find those objects which are very diffuse. So we may need to reduce these options down. And you'll see how the markup changes again and more cells are included. One of the side effects of nuclear contrast threshold is the cell nuclear mask gets larger or smaller because it becomes tighter around the nucleus itself. This is something that you can use in your benefit for segmenting cells, but I won't go into detail on that today, and we'll just treat this at the moment as a way of including or excluding cells. Nuclear size is also an issue here, so I can see I've got some small objects that I may want to include. So if I change the nuclear size, a lot more of those objects are now included. And you can work through this as long as you like to get the segmentation as good as you want it. Now, you'll never get 100% of the cells, or you'll never get 100% accuracy, so no false positives. There will always be some kind of discrepancy. Image analysis is about getting the best possible result and also using relative trends across multiple images. You can also segment sections here. Sorry, not sections. You can segment nuclei that are treated as a single instance. So there's an example here, which I'll just highlight for you, shown in the green, this guy in yellow. If I increase the segmentation aggressiveness, you see he gets split then into two cells. And before, it would have been treated as a single cell. So that's just an example of segmentation aggressiveness. Fill nuclear holes accounts for nuclei that are heterogeneous in their stain profile across the body of the nucleus. So that's something you can use. And finally, you've got the cytoplasm radius that we touched upon at the start. If you have a cytoplasmic stain, then by all means add a cytoplasmic radius. This will then ask Halo to look in this area around the nucleus for the stain presence. It's not 100% accurate because it's not mapping the cytoplasm precisely, it's dilating out from the nuclear mass. If you want 100% accuracy, you need to stain the membrane, and that's a way we can improve the quantification of the cytoplasm area. However, for most people, this dilation effect is usually sufficient. Okay, so we've now detected our cells. The next stage in the process is to threshold on the stain of interest, which is this Chi67. So if you want to, you can change the markup color. That's a new option that we've added, so you can have fancy markup colors. So if you want this to be, should refresh the thing, should open up. Okay, so yeah, it has to be after style markup, and it will show you a change markup color. You want it blue. Let's go on to look at the Chi67 markup, and we'll set some thresholds. Here you've got sliders for strongly positive, which is the right slider. The middle slider is to threshold 2+, or moderately positive cells, and then you've got the bottom slider, or leftmost slider, which segments cells from negative into 1+ category. If I increase the slider, you see how more of the cells become positive as moderate, and they're shown in orange, and if I increase again, all become 1+, and all the way up on the right slider, you see they mostly become negative. Halo will report number of positive cells as well as the breakdown, so you don't need to do this, which people used to do a lot, just sliding between 1+ and negative. So that used to be a trick when Halo was a lot more basic. You used to change the slider just to account for either the stain being present or absent. You don't need to do that anymore. Okay, when you're doing this, similar to the classifier, go to different regions of the tissue, make sure you're classifying correctly. And here you can see our contrast parameter is working, because we're not finding cells within the necrotic region. Okay, finally, let's come down to advanced. I want to touch upon the minimum tissue optical density. So if we come to the edge of the tissue, you'll see that Halo has automatically put a boundary line showing where the glass ends and the tissue begins. For most images, this value is the same. For Zeiss images, I'd recommend increasing this. They seem to have more of a background. What you get from this setting is you get an accurate quantification of tissue area. If you've got the tissue area accurately, then your number of cells per area or your number of RNA dots per area is correct. If this is inaccurately set, which I'll just show by decreasing, you see there the boundary is diffuse and we don't quite know where the tissue is beginning, then your area of tissue will be incorrect. So it's better to have that accurately set. In most cases, this default value works out of the box, but the exception will probably be lice images. Okay, so next you can add in your classifier if you've created one. So if we select classifier and we choose the necrosis classifier, you'll notice that classifiers and algorithms are saved within the same study folder that the image is from. If you want to look in all folders, then you can have this option here, all studies. So you can look in either different folders for the correct classifier, or you can look in all studies, or indeed you can import a classifier. So if you want one of the apps team to help you generate a classifier, they can send it to you by email and you can import it using this import option here. But for now, we'll just select this one we've previously created. And we now have to choose a class. So I'm going to choose the tissue, because I don't want to look in the necrotic region, and I don't want to look in the class region. This option here, store object data, will allow you to get that cell-by-cell array. So if you have this set to false, you'll just get a summary data. If you set it to true, you'll get all of the data on the individual cells. The downside, or alleged downside, to store object cell data is the processing time is slightly longer. But I don't find this detrimental in the real world. Maybe if you were doing maybe 100 very high magnification multi-channel fluorescent images, it may slow down your analysis in batch. But in the case of quick analysis, it's usually recommended to just leave the store object data set to true, so you can look at all of the different cell outputs. Okay, let's select analyze, and we can analyze a few things: the field of view, any annotation layers that we've generated, or we can look at the entire image. Real-time tuning is the only option here that doesn't generate a data set. This is just collecting information on this window and allowing you to do your tuning. So if I just quickly select entire image, and we should see the Halo analysis queue open, it will start by processing the classification of the image, and then it will move on to, well, it was just a little bit too quick in that one. If you do larger images, it'll take longer and you'll see a progress bar, but this is a bit too quick to show them. Okay, so the markup image now is covering the entire section, and we've got, we look at the results tab, a summary data set, which is the classified area was 24 millimeters squared. The tissue area was 16. This is the area we actually investigated. Within the tissue area, which you'll see down here, the positive cells were 48,671 out of a total of 116,000. So you've got a percentage of positive cells, 41%, and then the breakdown is a little bit further down here: weak, moderate, and strong. So these are the percentages. Of that 41, 22% were weak, 17% was moderate, and a small proportion, 1.9%, was strong. That's according to the threshold we set. So if you didn't agree with that, you could pick out a cell that you probably think is a 3+, maybe this one. This is an optical stain density of 1.497, and you could fill in these options here, what you think is the cutoff. So it's possible to look at object level data and go back and reform the thresholding here. Okay, so that's your summary data, which is up here. You can also look at your object data, which is down here, and I've just shown that if you select regions or cells, they'll show up here under object level data. So there's some options. Under object actions, you may remember in the intro, I alluded to the fact you could source and filter. So if you wanted to look at just the 3+ options, you could then modify the object data table to get that particular result output. And you can save these filters as well if you want to. So this is a new feature for 3.1. I've actually never used it for myself, but it looks very handy because you'd be able then to save a filter category and just apply it to any image that you ran through this analysis. So very handy. Plotting is also an option. We're quite close to the end of the initial training session now, so I won't go into too much detail regarding the plotting. But if we just put maybe a custom filter in, just saying we're going to look at Chi67 positive cells. So we've made a custom filter and said does not equal 0. We could then add a plot, and you'll see that I'm able to generate a plot and just apply some options here. There you go. So I've just made a heat map based on the stain intensity. You can do all sorts in here. This actually has been reworked for 3.1, so you can apply filters. You can click the highest or lowest expressors. So lots can be done in terms of plotting. Whilst we are plotting, you can also look at the relative positions of cells from each other or from the user-drawn lines or boundaries, or indeed regions created by a classifier. So if you're looking to map the position of cells, bear in mind the spatial analysis module allows you to do quite a lot of that. Plots can also be made in a histogram format, and you can then save the plot here, which would then, the spatial plot, then associates this plot with this result output. So you get a default plot, this is a histogram, but you also get the option to make self-generated user plots. If anyone wants more information on plotting and data visualization, then we can come back to that. Probably more of a feature or workflow that would belong in the advanced or intermediate training session. But it is nice to see just what you can achieve with these kind of spatial plots. Okay, so what I mentioned in the introduction was the Figure Maker tool. And you can look at Figure Maker as a quick way to output graphical results. So if you select Tools and Figure Maker, you'll see the default option comes up with 4 panes. If I click on the image, anything within the main viewer is transposed immediately into the Figure tool. So I could select to fit within the figure, and if I make changes here, like apply the markup image, you see how it saves the figure? Or the classifier markup saves the figure? So I could turn off the markup, click the next pane, which automatically locks this one, and then this one then becomes open. Now I could add a classifier markup, turn that on, lock this one manually if I wish, so it turns to green, click the next one, change the analysis markup, lock this one manually, and then maybe I wish to have a higher mag insert for my final pane, which I'll then lock. If you want to add additional rows or columns, you can do so. Maybe you want a thicker border, maybe you want to space. And as I click through these options, you'll see various things added to the figure. So click. See how I'm modulating the appearance of the figure, just using these easy options. If you want custom labels, then you can add this down here. And then you can capture the label if you have a label associated with your slide generated by the scanner. if you press Save As, you'll be able to save the figure here. So you can choose the image size, you can choose the resolution, and this is a minimum of 300 dpi, so that's for publication quality figures. You can generate them within Halo, so that's a nice little tool to use. Okay, so that's a visual output. I will just come back to the Study tab just to conclude this overview training, where we're going to show how you would export data from Halo. So you could do this in batch mode, but I'll show just with a single image. So if I select, and again, you see my habit of right-clicking, but you could very easily select the image actions here and select export. We'll just use the right-click because I'm used to that. And we'll select export, and you see here you've got options to export the summary analysis data, object analysis data, annotations, or you can select advanced. So just to recap, this is the summary data, this is the object data, and then if you come back to the Studies tab, we'll click Advanced just to show you what this will generate. So select Export Advanced, and you've now got an Export Manager tool. This allows you to export images, your saved settings, any of the outputs, so summary or object data, and various things that we use to generate the result. They're all outputs as well, so it's just saving all of your data. What I'd like to do is treat this as a clock and just come around in a clockwise fashion. So if you want to export full-size images, you can do so. So you can tick and untick these boxes. If you wish to export all results with a given image or multiple images, or maybe just look at the last result. So often when we're optimizing, the last result is the most interesting. So if we select last, you'll see only one is present. If we select all, you'll see the classifier, but also the cytonuclear-based analysis is shown. Summary results, as I mentioned, the object data result, which is all of the cells, some 116,000 objects, and also your analysis report. So Halo will make a Word document that you can use to send to your colleagues, or if you're performing analysis for somebody else, you can send them an analysis report. The report is actually customizable. If you want to go into a template and edit the report, you can make it in the CRUK colors, or you could change the font. That's possible to do so. So let's just go ahead and press generate, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so you can see some green squares appearing as we're generating image data. Okay, so I've made something called the Halo archive. That archive will be sent to wherever you direct it. So
Sorry, Sean, this is greyed out as well.
Sure. Okay, so now, thanks for pointing on that.
Thank you.
Now showing the Halo archive. So when you generate the result and press and generate, it will automatically open this window up within your Windows environment. So if we look at images, you'll see some thumbnails showing the classifier markup, the analysis markup. You've also got your analysis settings. So this is showing the settings that we use to generate these image data set. And if we come back to the archive, here's some plots that we generated. The first one was automatic by Halo, and the second one was user-generated. And then we've got two Excel sheets, and you can probably guess from the file size which is the summary data and which is the cell-by-cell data. So if I just open the object results, might take longer because it's such a large. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of data there. So yeah, all the way down, that's every single cell. the X1 position if you want to mine the data.
This is greyed out as well, Sean.
Here we go. Thanks.
Cheers.
Should get into the habit of recognising that. It's changed WebEx. So it used to be the case that you shared everything, and now you're sharing individual things, and it's one of those habits that's quite difficult to break. So just scrolling down, we can see all of the cells in the data set, and the XY coordinates if you want to mine them. And you'll also have some of the outputs in terms of nucleus stain OD. The reason it's not in this one is because this is from the classifier. If you look at the other results, you'll see that they are showing information on individual cells. So, and the analysis algorithm will output object data for everything. Okay, let's have a look at the analysis report. So again, I'll learn this time, I'll share the Word doc. So analysis report, if we scroll down, you'll see that for every result, and there were two here, or two jobs. This is the first analysis we performed. This was classification of the tissue. This is quite a simple result output. So you've just got classified area, tissue area, necrosis area, and some thumbnails. If I go down to the next one, you can see that we've got a little bit more interesting data, and we've got the classification, but also the object level data, which the cytonuclear module provided to us. Okay, I will probably pause the train there as it's reached the end of the session. We've got a few options available to you. We can arrange another session to do some additional things that we missed, such as TMA, spatial analysis, Halo AI, maybe some advanced options and annotations. And then we can also do follow-up sessions for individual troubleshooting for images. I know Alistair sent some images through, which we're able to sort of deep dive into them and pick apart the approach for that particular image. But I'll open it up to Marie Renner just to see what she would like to do at the end of the allocated time.
Thank you, Sean. I'd like to first thank you and your team for all of this. And I know that working from home and online sessions are new to everyone. I'd like to apologize to anyone who had any issues with links and problems logging on. Yes, hopefully we can arrange something in the future. And if we can share the recording, I'm sure that would be useful to a few people. They can go back and see what we've already done. Sean, as you mentioned before, if anyone has any specific questions from the training today, they can get in touch with yourself, and we can work on anything that we can help with as part of the Cancer Center and the Halo platform we have ourselves. And so if anyone has any interest in using it, please get in touch with myself, Marilyn Isai. Sean, if anyone has any similar questions, perhaps we can arrange further training sessions, as you mentioned, on a more intermediate and advanced training level. And then people can decide if they'd like to join those. So we can keep in touch and I can let everyone know when those might be arranged for.
That sounds great. And I'd like to say thank you everyone for attending. I mean, we don't often get this big a turnout, and that's really great to see. So we're very happy to help, and all of these people who have signed up today, we can help them get experience and you know, do analysis in as much detail as they want to go.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll be in touch for further information. But please get in touch if you have any specific questions that you think might be interested for further training.
Well, I should mention there's a Halo user group meeting coming up where we'll overview new features of the software. But you'll also have customer speakers who are talking. It's a virtual meeting, as you can imagine. But they'll be talking about what they do with the software. So if you want to get a flavour as well, I could forward you the invite to that, and that could be something that maybe people would want to attend. That's on the 19th and 20th of May. So it's coming up next week.
Great. If anyone's interested, please get in touch and I can forward on the invite as well.
Great. Well, thanks everyone, and I hope you all have a good day.